Hey everybody, um, welcome to post number week 3, I think. Justin, thanks for the awesome questions. Sorry, I don't really have creative juices flowing tonight. This is my patio. It's nice. I like my patio. I just realized that I always look up left when I'm thinking. So in these videos, if I'm doing one of these, don't worry. There's probably not anything being thrown at me from there where I'm thinking. But let's get with the questions. So we had some awesome reading once again in our finance and budget books that we were chatting about. And Justin, your first question to us was, have we had the opportunity to be part of a budgeting process before? Have setting parameters, setting guidelines, all that kind of good stuff. And unfortunately, I don't really have a lot to say on that because no, I haven't. I've never really been one of the main budget people. Like I've said input and kind of stated my opinion about little things, but no, I have not gotten to. You talked about the scanning the environment. So trying to think of what can change, what can affect the budget in previous years. And I think one of the largest things we saw in the past couple semesters that we saw coming, which was a good thing, was the rise in gas prices. We budgeted all of our trips because we go really very far sometimes. We go all the way to the Grand Canyon, to the Texas-Mexico border, all over the place. And a little small change in gas can really affect the whole pricing of the trip. And we give the students a certain price. We don't really want to change that last minute, so it ends up we usually have to eat it if we don't plan for it. And that was the case previously, and luckily it worked out. Another big thing with, I think, campus rec, the outdoor industry especially, is keeping up with the Joneses, if you will, or basically following industry standards. They change a fairly decent amount. Not super quickly, but who knows? PFDs, for instance, life vests. For a while, that wasn't that big of a thing when you were leading a kayaking trip or something along that line, and then all of a sudden, the American Canoe Association, that is kind of our mothership when it comes to paddle sports, say that they say you have to have a PFD, not just with you by law, but wearing it. So now there needed to be an investment in more comfortable PFDs that people will wear, and that will do the job. So changing of industry standards is probably another external that that comes into play. I know another one is just nature taking its toll on stuff. Something that recently happened on our challenge course was we have a boardwalk that goes back there, and it's rotting a lot faster than anyone anticipated. Where they're going to have to replace it instead of in 10 years, maybe closer to 5 years next year. So that is an external factor that they didn't see really coming, but they picked up on, and hopefully it won't be such a gut check when it happens because we can now plan for it. Your next question had to do with forecasting, and I'm glad you talked about it because when I was starting to read it, I was kind of in the back of my head, like, there's no way someone can predict 5 years down the road exactly what's going to happen. I mean, budget-wise, there's so many variables that can play into it. I think in the book it talked about the big factors that go into forecasting are data regarding past performance, information from an environmental scan, and unique issues faced by the unit. Unique issues faced by the unit. That is the most broad freaking term I've ever seen in my life. That can be anything. So basically, something can happen and it will change. But you have to predict that. But you can't predict it. That's why I was extremely happy when I read, and actually you mentioned it too, Justin, that forecasting is an inexact science at best. is what they talked about, and it's true. I mean, it's not a bad thing necessarily, and I think that brings us to the next part of that question. Do you think it's effective, and is it a good thing, yes or no? I kind of think it's a combination. It's a yes and no. Yes, it's effective because obviously there are parts that you can predict and you need to be able to predict so you can budget. I think the big problems happen when you start to go further and further and further forecasting. That's like back home in Florida, hurricanes, they come. What can you do? But when you see it on the TV, there's kind of a V where it's going to go. Dang it. A V. So your hurricane's right here, and in a couple hours, obviously, it's going this direction. It's going to be there. Well, when you're talking about days, 5 days, 7 days later, that little dot is going to be a much bigger V because variable change. I mean, it can happen. And the further away you get, the bigger that change becomes. So I think it's almost similar when you're forecasting a budget. Whoa. Forecasting budget, forecasting weather. Okay, so forecasting, yeah. It makes sense. Think about when you're looking at your 10-day forecast. You got a good idea. Maybe it might happen. But let's be real. Weather people aren't really that accurate all the time, especially that far out. Now, when you're looking at your hour one, yeah, they're going to be a lot more accurate. And I think that has to do, and you have to realize that when you're looking at forecasts for budgets, the closer you are and the shorter the time period is, the more accurate it's going to be. But if you're putting all your eggs in the basket that this forecast model is telling you A, 5 years down the road, there's probably a fairly good chance that it might end up being B or C or freaking J. Who knows? So I think knowing that going into it is a very, very good thing, and knowing to reevaluate. The closer you get to reevaluate whether you think it's going to be the same or not, you have more data to look at. I believe that's everything for this week. Sorry to wait so late. I do apologize, y'all. It was a fun, exciting week, but no excuses. But I hope you all have a great weekend. Stay warm. It got cold again. I know, it kind of sucks. But warmer here than in Ohio. But you guys have fun. Thanks for listening. Deuces.